August 16th, 2022. Welcome to the Winter Faith Podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. I am your host, Andy Frazier. Grateful, very grateful to be hosting a podcast today. No interview guests today, just me. So August 16th, pretty important day in my life. Hasn't always been important day in my life, but now it is. So exactly 365 days ago, I went into Duke Hospital at 4 in the morning, Duke University Hospital in Durham, to have a procedure done, which is a very lengthy procedure. I want to say 5 or 6 hours, and it's a procedure called the HIPEC. It is a surgery, a debulking surgery is what they call it, a combination of chemotherapy and a combination of this process, debulking process of removing cancer from my body. This cancer had started in my appendix. It is a slow growing cancer, but they still wanted to have this procedure. So, August 16th, 2021 is when I had that procedure. So now I am 365 days removed from that procedure. And I reflect back on 1 year ago. 1 year ago, I went in for this surgery. I was scared. I was hopeful. I was worried. I remember I was already tired going into that day, obviously building up to this very important surgery. Um, trying to do everything to get ready for the surgery. Um, and so I ended up staying, I believe, 10 nights, 11 days in the hospital. During the hospital stay, definitely had not really an easy hospital stay. Recovery is kind of tough from this surgery. A lot of soreness, a lot of difficult moving, difficult turning. Obviously, I had about 50 something staples down the middle of my stomach. I can show you pictures if you want, but you probably don't want to. It was pretty gnarly scar, is what my doctor officially said. Um, that's what he told my wife, anyways. But I don't think he ever said that to me personally. But yeah, my hospital stay was kind of rough. I definitely threw up a couple times. I definitely had just some medication and reaction to some stuff that was pretty painful. Um, cried a few times. So I remember emotionally it was kind of difficult at times. Obviously, I didn't sleep well because in a hospital, you definitely don't sleep well. It's not your bed at home. So it felt like it was long. It felt like it was exhausting. It felt really, really tough. So that first day, obviously, 5, 6 hours, you're asleep, and then your body's kind of waking up. So you don't get to eat a lot. I don't remember being terribly hungry, but I remember being really, really thirsty. But you still have to wait for your body to wake up. So you're not supposed to drink. And I definitely drank a couple of times, just drinking water. And drinking water had some terrible, terrible side effects every once in a while. Um, yeah. So as I, think about kind of the day to day of those times, it was pretty difficult. It wasn't like an easy, like everything is going well. You got to be kind of patient with your body for several weeks after that, maybe even months after that. And then I think there's just a lot of fear that comes with trying to figure out kind of not necessarily how to walk again, but I think I was kind of worried about like taking showers, about turning the wrong way, about, something going wrong and the staples not working out, or popping out. I don't know, probably stuff that's not logical. I'm sure some of my doctors would be like, that's not going to happen to you, but I'd never gone through it before. And so you're in this new phase. I haven't had a lot of medical procedures, certainly not anything like that. But I do remember the doctor coming in and saying the surgery went well, and now the tough part begins, which is the recovery part, the emotional, psychological, mental aspects of going through having cancer and having cancer removed. I mean, even saying it today, I still think I'm in a lot of denial that it didn't really happen, that it's kind of like this out of body experience that just, yeah, just doesn't feel real sometimes, even though obviously it was. But I wanted to reflect on this phrase that I know I've told people before, and that phrase is not everybody comes home from the hospital. Not everybody comes home from the hospital. Some people go into the hospital and they meet death, they die, their life is over. And so I've been very fortunate to come home from the hospital, from this and from other hospital visits as well. Um, so now a year later, I still feel the weight of what I endured. I mean, many of the details I don't remember. I know that my mom and Dom came to visit me at the hospital every day. I know my dad drove my mom to the hospital every day, and they were here with me. I know I didn't get to, see my kids or stay at home for all that time. And I know that I could only have two visitors, and I had to give that list of who could come, which was my mom and my wife Dom. And so I remember those aspects of it, but I don't remember any nurses. I don't really remember any doctors' names except for the main doctor that did the surgery. Um, yeah, it's kind of a blur for me as I reflect on that still a year later. I know my wife had to do a lot of work. My parents had to do a lot of work as far as kids and working and driving and just me not being home. And I know that it was really lonely at times in the hospital. I don't remember a lot of picking up the phone and calling people, but I do remember one time I called my friend John and he prayed over me, on the phone, and just, yeah, there's definitely some sad nights and some lonely nights, and yeah, you're just processing what's going on, and it's just kind of like a probably like a survival mode a little bit, but yeah, just really difficult days. I remember that, but it is kind of a blur on some of the specifics. But yeah, not everybody comes home from the hospital. I worked as a hospital chaplain. I prayed with people that were dying. I prayed with family members who knew their loved ones were dying. I was in the room when people had their last breath. Like I experienced that very phrase, that not everybody comes home from the hospital, and then to be in the hospital bed obviously was a much different experience. I remember calling on the chaplains a couple times and letting them talk and pray with me. Don't remember any of their names. Um, but yeah, I thought it was important to mark today. Um, 1 year ago is when this surgery happened, and I want to take time to reflect on it. I did some writing on it. I went to see a movie, and in the movie, one of the main characters gets cancer and dies. Did not know that happened in this movie, but that was one of the storylines. And so I continue and I just continue to say, not everybody comes home from the hospital, but I also continue to say, I'm so grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for my community. I can't name all my community. I try to sometimes, but I mean, I'm never gonna be able to totally process everybody that prayed for me, everybody that wrote me a letter, everybody that gave financial support. Um, I'll never be able uh, to be able to process everything that people did for me. I think there's a weird sense of guilt of wanting to thank everybody, but I can't do it. It's too big. It's too many people. And so I'm really grateful for my community, of people from places I work to churches, that I worked at or went to, people in my life currently that live in the same city, and people in my life from um, West Virginia to Tennessee to Wisconsin to Arkansas to Mississippi to Florida to California, Texas, Oklahoma, people that reached out to me that, maybe I never got a chance to write a thank you note to or something. Um, I think I get overwhelmed with how much people care for me. And I think about my faith and how it's grown. I think it continues to grow every day that I'm alive. Um, and I'd like to say I don't worry anymore because, like, oh, I had this big event and this big health event, and I survived it, and God took care of me and my family took care of me, and I'm alive. But I still worry about a lot of things. I worry financially. I worry about paying bills. I worry about if my body will get sick again. I worry about if the cancer will come back again. I still think I have trauma in my body, and I'm still processing everything. I think there's quite a bit of grief and just about the time I lost, whether it's at work or whether it's with my family. Um, this was also not my only surgery. Obviously, I didn't know this at the time, but I would have more surgeries, more scary health events. October 1st is a big day. That's when I got rushed to the emergency room for a splenic aneurysm and lost a lot of blood. I had a pacemaker put in. There was some um, difficulties with that kept me in the hospital longer. Couple of trips to the emergency room that turned out to be nothing, but you just don't know it at the time. Trips to the hospital where you just, yeah, you feel you think something's wrong. Um, I visited Duke Hospital, Wake Med Hospital, UNC Rex Hospital, spent 30 plus nights in the hospital. So I didn't know any of that at the time. Obviously, I just thought this was going to be a big surgery, but there would be so much more. And so even though I lost some of these days, I would continue not lose days. I don't know the right way to say it, but still grieving, I think, a lot of just the experience overall. And it's exhausting. It's difficult to talk about. I know I can say some information. I know I can process some of it, but I can't really explain a lot of the stuff medically. I know that some of these things that happen to me are not related. And I think that is difficult to process, especially when I tell other people, because people are always like, oh, is this related? Or did this happen because of that? I don't fully understand it. Um, but I know I'm doing, I don't know, this phrase doesn't feel great, but I feel like I'm doing okay. Like I'm working through my feelings, I'm working through the trauma in my body, I'm working through the grief. I'm still working every day, like actually, like going to work. But I'm also, I think, trying to process my emotions and my feelings and my thoughts, and that I am grateful to be alive. But I keep thinking, like, what is God up to? Is this going to turn into a different job? Is this going to turn into a different career? Is this do I need to do something less stressful? um, and so I think the question that I often ask myself is just, what is God up to? And I don't know, but I know that I have time on this earth, and I want to share my stories. I want to share my experiences because I hope that it encourages others. And when you think, oh, I'm going to send a card to somebody, I'm going to make a phone call, I'm going to send a text, I'm going to give $10. And I'm just here to say I think it does matter. but um, you might not ever hear back from the person. It might, uh, yeah, you might not maybe feel like you're doing much either. But I just want to encourage you, I guess, just as I'm processing this, to do little things for people, or they're not little, but do things for people. Encourage people, love people, give of your time, give of your energy, because that, like, people is what is really what matters. It can be delivering somebody a meal, it can be writing somebody a card, it can be giving somebody a book, it can be calling somebody. Uh, it can be giving them a Starbucks gift card, whatever it is. That I just encourage you to give of your time and your energy and your gifts and your skills, and that's what I try to do with my podcast. That's what I try to do with my life. I try to share my story to better encourage people to realize, like, if you're grieving, if you're stressed, if you're anxious, if you're sad, that is okay, and that's something that God has given you. God has given you these emotions and these thoughts. God has given me these emotions and these thoughts and these stories, even if I don't like the story that I'm in. And to just ask, what is God up to? So 1 year later, I feel okay physically. I feel emotionally okay. I think I've accepted where I'm at emotionally for the most part. I do think my emotions are maybe a little bit more extreme than they were a year ago, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that in a factual way. I think they're bigger. I think they're wider emotion range, and yeah, really grateful for my life. Really grateful that I got to come home from the hospital. So, may you be a person that serves other people by sharing your story, by sharing your gifts with others. May you be a person that is willing to embrace all the emotions that you experience. May you be a person that acknowledges the grief and trauma in your body, both emotionally and physically. And may you be a person that other people can look and be encouraged by your word and by your works.